Hello, friends. Welcome to yet another interesting session on conceptual learning, 1 inch miles deep. Uh, Hope you're doing well, and without much delay, let's get started. In our previous session, we did discuss about the COPIS or the SIPOC concept in detail as to how do you develop a SIPOC, why do you need a SIPOC, and when do you need a SIPOC. So if you haven't watched that video, I'm going to place a link in the description. Please do have a look at it. Right, I'm going to give you an overview of the SIPOC, where S stands about the supplier, I is input, input specifications, then you have output specifications, and the customer. So, and we did see the effective way of developing a SIPOC, or getting the understanding of the requirement of the customer, is to start from the customer and then work backwards. So COPIS, COPIS, right? So today we're going to discuss about the critical part of a SIPOC. You can call it as the heart of a SIPOC, which is nothing but a process. So we're going to, this is an extensive study in itself, but we are going to make an attempt to understand this simple but yet effective. Now, if you look at the textbook definition of a process, a simple uh, definition would something look like this, right? A process is a series of actions or steps taken in order to achieve a particular end. Now we're going to pause here for a moment and take away some of the key items from here, which will help us check our understanding of the process later on, right? So the first thing that I want to highlight here is series. Series, what do you mean by series? Series is nothing but a sequence, right? If you take up a book and you start reading the book, and if you directly go to chapter 10, instead of chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you would not understand anything. So you will have to follow a particular sequence to read a book. So you go to chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, and chapter 4. And chapter 2 is dependent upon what chapter 1 has, and chapter 3 is dependent upon what chapter 2 has, right? That's a sequence, right? It has to always be in a sequence. What do you mean by actions or steps? So what are you going to do in that particular step, right? That's what you define. What action are you going to take in a specific, any given step? And finally, what are you arriving at, right? What is the end result of a process, right? That's what the entire process is all about, right? These are the key learnings. And if you have to simply represent this in a pictorial format, so that everyone understands this, this is how a process can be drawn in a pictorial form. So it has a start, it has an end, it has step one, step two, step three. Now, this you can see one thing, this also helps you see what is the boundary of the process. So this is nothing but your boundary of the process. So from where does it start and where does it end? So you are clear about the goal or the outcome of the entire process in itself, right? So, and you also follow a sequence to arrive at the end result. Now, this is what we call it as a process map. The pictorial representation of a process is called as a process map. All right, let's get started and help Tofu prepare a cup of coffee. Help him with some of the steps or the process that he needs to follow in making of the coffee. Let's get started with a high level understanding of the process steps. So to begin with, uh, Tofu need to prepare a cup of decoction, a coffee decoction. Then he has to, let's mark this as step one. Then he has to boil water and milk together in a vessel. Let's mark this as process number two. And he needs to add milk and sugar to the cup along with the decoction. And let's mark it as three. And then serve coffee to mom. That's the step number four. And with this, that process of making a coffee ends. Now, with this, Tofu is not confident enough and go ahead and start preparing the coffee. He might need further assistance in breaking down these high level steps into minute detailed steps, which are actionable, which follow a sequence. If you remember, if we saw the definition, which follows the sequence and specific action steps, which will help him to achieve the output, which is nothing but a cup of coffee. Now, we usually call a process with 4 to 5 steps as high level process map. Keep in mind, don't exceed more than 5 steps when you are looking at a high level process. Break it down into 4 to 5 steps, not more than that, unless and until you get into a complex process. But this is what I would recommend. And if you further get into the details, let's say if I just have to take step one, which is prepare coffee decoction, I can break this down into multiple steps, right? So to prepare a decoction, he needs to have take a washed coffee mug and then add 2 teaspoons of instant coffee. And then the third step would be add 1 tablespoon of hot water and then stir well for 10 seconds and keep it aside. And now we are ending this with a connector, but I'll tell you why this is required. But if you see, there are rectangular boxes and arrows. Now, the rectangular boxes that you see here denotes the step, while the arrows show the direction of these steps. You should always have these things understood properly. And if you look at the details in each of the steps as well, we are talking more about specific. We are measuring, we are taking an actionable step, right? When you say take 2 teaspoons of instant coffee, and we are asking how much and what of that instant coffee. And then we are also talking about how it needs to stir well for 10 seconds. So these are some of the specifics that you need to keep in mind while you are defining a process map. Now, moving to the next step, right? If you have to say boil milk and water, how do I do it, right? This is the next step that follows, to preparing of the coffee. Now, take a clean vessel, add 1/4 cup of drinking water and 3/4 cup of milk. If you remember, this is something which we discussed in our SIPOC when it comes to inputs and input requirements, getting specifics, and this is how it helps you, uh, you know, in terms of having things in place before you start actually working on a process. Now keep the vessel on the stove and boil, right? So that's the next step. So if you remember, for each and every step, I'm naming that step. I'm giving a sequence to that step so that it is pictorically very clean, and anyone who just follows this process is able to easily make, a cup of coffee. And that's how detailed it should be. That's how specific it should be. Now, if you say, what next on this particular thing, right? Now, how till when should I uh, boil the water? Uh, um, Boil the milk, right? Now we can give it a threshold. Let's say 5 minutes it takes for the water to boil or the milk to boil. Now, if yes, if no, let it be there. You just take a watch and start looking at it. If yes, then turn off the stove. Now, if you see here, we are just easily trying to say, okay, if this is the step one, we can still break down into 4 steps. Let's say step two, then still break down into 4 steps. So we will continue to do that with each of the high level process map. Now, the next point that I want to bring is the connectors, right? We had kept the coffee aside. Whenever you get to understand that, you need to, a part of the process, you need to create and keep it aside to connect it somewhere at the later part. That's what we are doing here, right? Initially, we created a decoction in a cup of in a coffee mug, and we kept it aside. Now it's the time that we mix all of the ingredients. In between, we did have a process which you see here clearly, but that had nothing to do with this. Now, what we use in these cases, we use connectors to say, okay, the process does not end here, but we usually use this, this particular step in some other process, in some other steps, and that's what we are going to do here, right? That's what we have done here. So pour the hot milk to the coffee mug, and then add 1 teaspoon of sugar, and then stir well for 30 seconds. Now place the cup on a tray, and then serve the cup to the mom, and that ends the process here. So the process, which usually we show here as 1 to 4 steps, has taken us 13 steps. Now this is more specific and details if you see here. Now that, like I keep telling you, detailed. This is called as a detailed level process map, right? And then the outcome is fantastic. Mom not only enjoyed the coffee but was also impressed with the perfection of the output by Tofu. Tofu has made this for the first time, and it came out so well just because of these things. Now, you always need to keep in mind, right? Always develop a high level process map. That's your first step. Don't exceed more than 4 to 5. Always develop detailed process steps from high level process map. Now, if you see the way I have mapped this is breaking down each one of the steps, right? And trying to give more details, more specifics in terms of data, in terms of how much of what is required, uh, you know, to kind of ensure that the detail level process is as clear as you following this and making the process work, produce output. So that's your second step. So high level process map, detailed, you always focus on, go back and check how it can be derived from a high level process map. Always at each step capture the verb noun with measures. If I say the verb usually means action. What should I do? What should I do? You know, what, take, clean, right? Pour, boil. So these are actions, right? And what is noun? It talks about water, milk. What should I pour? What should I heat? What should I, stir? So it talks about those nouns. So ensure that there is a combination along with how much measure: 1/4 cup of milk, 3/4 cup of milk, 1 tablespoon of sugar, 2 teaspoons of hot coffee, and so, right? That's the measure. So capture verb, noun with measures. Now, this is a bonus point for you guys. Beautify your process map with color combinations like font, steps, label each of the steps. Make it simple to understand, right? Now, that's what helps you fall in love with a process. And then, unless and until from no clarity to this much level of clarity, and kind of wow, the level of understanding that you are getting into the process. Whenever you have a leadership executives who come and tell you, I need to understand this process, first you instill everything that you can. Any question that comes into, you will be able to perfectly answer to your leadership, and that is how you make it an effective process map, right? So from nowhere, Tofu learned to kind of help mom enjoy the coffee which she preferred, and also Tofu understood the way to go about not only making a coffee but any process, be it personal or professional. Follow these simple steps and processes. You don't have to complicate stuffs. Make it as simple as possible, and as beautify as much as possible, to kind of get the attention that you wanted. Use rectangular boxes. Use a decision making. This is your decision making whenever you are making a decisions. Use connectors. These are called connectors. If you have if you have relationship between two different process steps, which are not sequential in nature. Use of a start and a start and the end of the process, and these are, and definitely the the arrows in, or the directions in which the process is going. That's something which you will always have to keep in mind, and you will be able to easily draw a perfect, beautiful process map. There are a lot to a process map which I will discuss to you in the different videos, but to now, start using these process maps, start developing, start improving, start understanding, every aspect of your life, be it professional or personal. These small little tools make a lot of difference. So I would love to see, your comments and some of the process maps that you would have built for anything that you do. Please share it with me, and I will be more than happy to review and get back to you. Right? So, um, so this again, this section's detailedly for you. I've just highlighted saying what is detailed and what is high level process maps. And with that, hope you fell in love with the concept that we studied, process maps. There's either a high level or a detailed process map, and which usually talks about how you go about doing that activity. So thank you so much for watching. We'll see you soon with a new concept in a new video. And until then, take care. Happy learning and also happy applying. Take care. Have a nice day. Bye.